everyone, welcome back to the channel. So picture this, you're standing at the top of a mountain, fresh powder everywhere, blue skies, and you're about to have the best ski day of your life. Sounds perfect, right? Well, what I'm about to tell you might make you reconsider that next ski trip. Because sometimes the mountains have other plans. Today we're diving into 5 absolutely terrifying stories of skiers who went out for what should have been a normal day on the slopes, and things went horribly, horribly wrong. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, so our first story takes us back to 1984 in Montana. And guys, this one is absolutely wild. Meet Kerry Swenson. She was only 23 years old, an incredible athlete who just won bronze at the Women's Biathlon World Championships. For those who don't know, biathlon is this insane sport where you combine cross-country skiing with rifle shooting. Pretty badass, right? So Kerry moves to Big Sky, Montana to work at a guest ranch, but really, she's there for the training opportunities. Every single day after work, she'd head out to the mountain trails to train, just doing her thing, living her dream. Now here's where it gets creepy. On July 15th, 1984, Kerry's out on her usual training run in the Ulysses Lake area. She's in the zone, probably feeling great, when suddenly she runs into 2 guys, Don Nichols, who's 53, and his 18-year-old son Dan. These weren't your average hikers, though. These 2 had completely abandoned society. They were living up in the mountains like survivalists, totally off the grid. And here's the thing that makes your skin crawl. Don decided it was time for his teenage son to get a wife. But obviously, there weren't exactly any women hanging around their mountain camp. Until Kerry showed up. When Kerry didn't come back to work that evening, people immediately knew something was wrong. Search parties went out right away. We're talking over a dozen searchers combing the mountains for hours. 2 of Kerry's close friends, Alan Goldstein and Jim Schwalb, they're out there searching too. And then, they find the Nichols camp. Kerry sees her friends and just starts screaming at the top of her lungs for help. But Don orders his son to shut her up, and Dan literally shoots Kerry to keep her quiet. Can you imagine? Her friends can hear her in pain, they're trying to get to her, and then Don starts firing at them too. One of those bullets hits Alan Goldstein right in the face. Kills him instantly. The Nichols realize they've just murdered someone and their location is blown, so they unchain Kerry. Yeah, she was chained up, and they just run. They leave Kerry there, barely able to move from her gunshot wound. After 18 agonizing hours, Kerry was finally rescued. But her friend was dead, and these psychos were in the wind. The story doesn't end there though. 5 months later, in December, authorities finally caught them. Dan got 10 years in prison. His dad, 85 years. And Kerry, this absolute warrior, recovered from her injuries, dealt with the trauma of losing her friend, and went right back to training. Years later, she competed in the International Biathlon in Oslo, Norway, and finished 4th. That's the kind of strength that just blows your mind. Alright, story number 2 is about what happens when curiosity literally almost kills you. Mark Deyowski was a regular at Red Mountain Resort in British Columbia. This guy basically grew up there. He knew all 120 ski runs like the back of his hand. He was a master of that mountain. But you know how there's always that one trail that's roped off? That forbidden zone that just calls to you? On December 30th, 2019, 34-year-old Mark decided to check it out. It wasn't even on the trail maps. He'd seen it multiple times and thought, I can handle this. It'll be quick. Spoiler alert, it was not quick. That morning around 10 a.m., he called his mom Cindy and told her his plan. She wasn't worried. Mark knew what he was doing, right? So he ducked under the rope barrier and started his descent. First, it was amazing. He's weaving through pine trees, dodging cliffs and boulders, having the time of his life, until he realized he'd completely missed his exit point back to the regular trails. So now Mark's stuck. The only way is down. And as he keeps going, the snow's getting thinner and the vegetation's getting thicker until finally, he can't ski anymore. He's in this deep ravine, his phone's dead, and night is falling. He tried everything. Walked along a creek dead end. Tried going back up the mountain, too exhausted. Tracks already covered by fresh snow. He's soaking wet, freezing cold, and completely lost. Day turns to night. Then another day passes. Mark got so weak at one point that he literally took off his jacket, laid down in the snow, and just waited to freeze to death. He was ready to give up. But then he thought about his family, his loved ones, and somehow he found the strength to keep going. On January 2nd, that's 3 days later, he's stumbling through the wilderness, screaming for help, when he hears voices. At first, he thinks he's hallucinating. But no, it's the rescue team, and they heard his shouts. They helicoptered him out immediately, got him to a hospital, and he made a full recovery. Mark said he would never cross those ropes again. And honestly, that's a lesson we should all remember. Those barriers are there for a reason. This next story is absolutely heartbreaking, and it shows you that even the most experienced people can't always predict what nature's about to do. February 1st, 2021. Eagle, Colorado. Seth Bossung was an architect and energy efficiency project manager who invited a group of friends to go backcountry skiing in the northern San Juan Mountains, an area locally called the Nose. 7 people total went on this trip. Among them were Adam Palmer, who was Director of Sustainable Communities, and Andy Jessen, founder of Bonfire Brewing Company. These weren't amateurs. Every single person on this trip was experienced, knew the area well, and had all the right equipment. They made it to the top without any problems. Perfect day, perfect conditions. They're about to start their descent when Mother Nature said, "Not today." Out of nowhere, this massive avalanche just starts. We're talking about something so huge it covered almost half the mountain slope and triggered a smaller avalanche on the side. The group tried to maneuver out of the way, but when thousands of tons of snow are barreling down at you, there's not much you can do. 4 of the 7 skiers got caught and swept away. They managed to dig out one person, minor injuries, incredibly lucky. But Seth, Andy, and Adam? Gone. Buried under at least 20 feet of snow and debris. Here's the thing, they all had avalanche beacons. These devices send out signals so rescuers can find you. The surviving group members could pick up the signals. They knew roughly where their friends were, but the debris was so deep and the weather was so bad that helicopters couldn't fly. They had to wait an entire day knowing their friends were down there. On February 3rd, authorities finally recovered all 3 bodies. Nobody was at fault here. This is just the reality of the mountains. They're beautiful, they're thrilling, but they're also deadly. And sometimes, even when you do everything right, tragedy still strikes. This story is straight out of a movie, except it's completely real and it took 40 years to solve. February 13th, 1983. A 27-year-old German-born winter mountaineer named Rudy Motor left his home in Fort Collins, Colorado for what was supposed to be a simple 2 to 3 night ski trip through Rocky Mountain National Park. He was experienced, he knew what he was doing. Just another adventure, right? 6 days later, his roommate realized Rudy still hadn't come home. Remember, this is 1983, no cell phones. So he called the authorities and a search began immediately. The problem? Mother Nature wasn't cooperating. There was over a foot of fresh snow, and the conditions were so dangerous that search teams had to keep pulling back. When they finally could search properly, They found Rudy's food stash and gear near a snow cave. They figured he'd holed up there during a storm. But Rudy himself? Nowhere to be found. They searched that spring. They searched the following summer. Nothing. Zero. The case went cold, and everyone assumed Rudy had gotten lost somewhere in that vast wilderness and died. Now here's where this gets crazy. Fast forward to August 2020. That's almost 40 years later. A hiker is out in the park near Skeleton Gulch, which is an ominous name if I've ever heard one, and they find skeletal remains in some avalanche debris. Rangers head out to investigate, but have to turn back almost immediately because a wildfire breaks out on the west side of the park. So the recovery gets delayed again. Summer of 2021, they finally get back out there. They recover the remains plus ski equipment and personal items. They try to match dental records, but it doesn't work. So they contact authorities in Germany, who cooperate with the investigation. And finally, after nearly 40 years, they confirm it, the remains belong to Rudy Motor. Think about that. This guy was missing for 4 decades. His family spent 40 years not knowing what happened. And then one random hiker stumbles upon the answer. The mountains keep their secrets for a long, long time. Okay, this last story is absolutely bonkers. It's not as dark as the others, but it's so bizarre that it'll stick with you. February 7th, 2018. Lake Placid, New York. Constantino's Danny Philippidis, a 50-year-old fire captain from Toronto, was on a ski vacation with his colleagues at Whiteface Mountain. Everything's going great until around 4 p.m. when Danny realizes he left his cell phone in his car. No big deal, right? He'll just ski down to the parking lot, grab his phone, and come back. Except, he never came back. His friends waited, got worried, called authorities. And what followed was this massive search operation. State authorities. Hundreds of volunteers, family, friends. This guy was a firehouse captain who'd spent his entire career saving lives. So everyone wanted to find him. Days went by. No sign of Danny. Then on the 6th day, he resurfaces. But get this, he's in Sacramento, California, on the other side of the country, and he has absolutely no idea how he got there. So here's what doctors think happened. Danny took a wrong turn on his way back to his car. At some point, he fell, maybe hit his head on a rock or a tree. Severe concussion, memory completely wiped. When he came to, he was dazed and confused. He somehow made his way to what he thought was the main ski lodge, but it was actually a children's ski slope that had been closed. He flagged down a truck, thinking the driver would help him off the mountain. But instead of going to a hospital or the police, Danny, in his confused state, apparently just stayed in the truck. He rode with this driver for days across the entire country. He couldn't remember if he knew the guy or not. Authorities never found the driver. The whole time, Danny's dealing with crushing headaches and fatigue. He's basically just sleeping through most of the trip. Finally, they reach Sacramento. The driver tells him this is the end of the line. And Danny finds himself wandering around a city with his credit card, but no ID and no memory of his own wife's phone number. He tried to buy a phone, couldn't, no ID. He's getting desperate. Eventually, he ends up at Sacramento Airport. And somehow, his wife's phone number pops back into his head. He calls her. She tells him to call 911 immediately. He does. Gets rescued, taken to a hospital, and makes a full recovery. Can you imagine being his wife? Your husband goes out to get his phone from the car and 6 days later calls you from California with no memory of how he got there? The human brain is incredible, but head injuries are no joke. Danny's lucky to be alive. So there you have it, guys. 5 absolutely insane stories from the slopes. The lesson here? The mountains are beautiful. They're exhilarating. But they're also unpredictable and dangerous. Whether it's running into the wrong people like Kerry, getting lost like Mark, facing an avalanche like Seth and his friends, vanishing for 40 years like Rudy, or literally ending up across the country with no memory like Danny. Anything can happen out there. So if you're planning a ski trip, tell someone where you're going. Don't cross those rope barriers. Bring emergency supplies. Check avalanche conditions. And maybe, just maybe, keep your phone on you. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more crazy stories. Drop a comment below and let me know. Would you still go skiing after hearing these stories? Or are you sticking to the bunny slopes from now on? Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.